Welcome, Ms. Katie Key, Alphonsus Academy and Center for the Arts, middle school math teacher. Katie, I want to thank you and welcome everyone for being here, but I want to thank you first for sharing your gifts with your students, and not only in math class, but for their entire lives, because I know you, a lot of your students and their families, and I know that you make these connections for life with these students. So thank you for that. And thank you for taking time from your lunchtime today to share your wisdom. So can you just give us a little bit of your background? I know your story as far as education, going to Catholic schools, but then tell us about how did you land at AACA?
Yeah. So I did the ACE program through Notre Dame, where I taught for 2 years in Birmingham, Alabama, where I taught math and science. And then I came to Alphonsus because I actually went to high school with Megan Stanton's sister. So we didn't know that interview, but that's how I ended up here. Was just I grew up in Lake Forest and wanted to teach in the city when I moved back to Chicago after ACE and teaching in Alabama. So I even though I was a science major, I took on math, and I've since gotten certification and everything in math. And I've been teaching initially 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math at Alphonsus. But for the last, I think, 10 years or so, maybe just 7th and 8th grade. The school has evolved a ton since I started here, and so is our math program. But it's been, every year is different, even though this is my 16th year teaching at Alphonsus.
Every year is different, especially with middle schoolers. So what would you say is what's special about middle schoolers? I think it takes a special person to really teach middle schoolers for so long.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of stuck in a tough spot where they're learning who they are. They're still making a ton of mistakes, but they're also a lot of times I treat them more like adults. Like, kids at that age can do so much more. They're capable of way more than people give them credit for. And so giving them responsibilities and letting them make mistakes with those responsibilities is a huge thing. I have stayed with that because you've really got an opportunity to help kids figure that out. And really the transition in middle school, the content is really more about problem solving and more real life application stuff than you would get in the younger grades. So that's why I love middle school.
Well, and they're so impressionable.
Yeah.
They're so impressionable, and also just want this meaning, and they have this strong meaning and purpose for what's coming next in their life. It's really starting to blossom and develop now.
And you can really make connections with kids. They actually want to have adult connections and and have role models. And so there's that aspect also. It's not just about the academics. It's about making meaningful connections and supporting them inside and outside of school, and following up on their weekend or attending sporting events and things like that. Knowing that there's not just your parents in your life, but there's lots and lots of people that support you around you.
It's true, because also at that age, you may not talk to your parents about everything. I mean, that's the goal, but they need to have other adults in their lives. Definitely. Absolutely. Okay. So what would you say? And I've, Conrad, my son, has told me a bit about your math, about when you're teaching them, it's more about the process and the problem solving and feeling comfortable and making mistakes, like you just mentioned. What would you say if you were giving some advice to parents? I know in my household, when my kids were in middle school and upper elementary, that math was sort of everyone had so much anxiety around math with parents, and you have to do well in math, and you have to be in all these advanced classes, and there's a lot of pressure and anxiety that can come from this. Yeah. So what would be your advice for parents?
Well, I think that a lot of anxiety around math is that the idea that you have to get the right answer. And for math, especially for me and watching students, the kids that make the most progress are the ones that actually make mistakes and learn from them. And we're really lucky at Alphonsus that we don't grade homework. It's truly an opportunity for practice. And so one advice that I would give parents is definitely let their kids do their homework on their own. Don't correct it. I mean, there's a lot of neurological science based around the fact that like your brain needs to be confused in order to grow. And so like if you're not getting taking risks and failing at it, that and trying to figure out where that mistake is, like your neurons actually become denser when you are trying to find those mistakes than if you just get the right answer. So in class, like when I teach, we truly use homework as practice. And like sometimes the kids will come in and like they say, I didn't get anything right. And I say, well, the fact that you actually know that you didn't get anything right is actually a big deal, because that means that you're thinking about what you're doing. And then we spend a lot of time in class actually analyzing mistakes. So we'll like show some work on the board that doesn't have the right answer and figuring out like where did this person make the mistake, or just like looking at work in different ways to problem solve, because so much of life isn't just about like the final product, but like look at all these different ways and creative ways to like think and work through this problem systematically. So it's really more about like the process. And then figuring out mistakes with the process and the actual answer. So I would definitely tell parents, like, let kids do it on their own. It helps teachers see like what they're capable of doing. And they get so much more out of the actual process that way.
And they need to learn to struggle in all things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just part of it. And that's the hard part. And once I think you realize it's okay to struggle, and everyone realizes that.
Right.
I mean, we're not torturing them. They just need to struggle in order to learn. And I think it's just hard for parents to see them struggling, but it makes for a better life.
Right. And it like, that's just a good life lesson. Like you will struggle all the time, but like homework is just like this little tiny like portrait of what real life is like. And it's a super low risk way to like kind of figure out stress and things like that. So there's little lessons along the way in all of it.
Okay, so one more thing, thinking about as we're developing out of middle school, high school, college, depending on what you study. I mean, math, some kids are going to go into a more advanced math class, some kids aren't. And what I've noticed with my three is that they did not take advanced math in middle school or high school, really. Mm-hmm. And what has happened in their lives, really all three of them, is that their development in math has happened on a scale that I never would have ever believed, but it's just because of that, like the hard working and the struggle, and also just kind of, I think, deciding that you're going to do it. So I'm trying to ask you, when we're worried, when parents are worried that they're not in this advanced math class as grade 9, right? Just kind of taking, again, we keep talking about the longer road and the outlook. It's a life outlook. Well, I mean, Julia's studying business right now, and she hasn't had, she was an international relations major, and she hasn't had math in 7 years, and she's really working hard in accounting, really hard. Yeah. And that's okay.
I think too, kids have different paths in learning, like in every subject. So if you are, I think so much as I've become more experienced as a math teacher, is like math is very much, you don't think of it as, but there's a lot of spatial relationships and planning. And as a middle schooler or like a 5th and 6th grader, like you're not great at planning. No, and so really when you start any type of problem, whether it's math or like planning a project out, like you need to think long term, and that's not a skill that everybody has. Even when you're solving just an equation, you need to think systematically, like this is where I start, I need to get here, what are all the steps in between? And that's a really high level of thinking. So like not everyone is there when they're like 12, 13, 14 years old. And so that happens for everyone at different times in their life. And you also think about math, like when you're doing like slope and geometry, like you have to be able to imagine and manipulate things in your head, which some people don't have that spatial reasoning until they're older. I mean, I didn't even understand physics really, and I took it in college until after college when I started teaching it. Like it comes at different points for everybody. Yes. So, I mean, I think that it's important for every parent to know that like that development will happen at some point as long as they keep working at it, but not everyone has the same time when they're ready to do it. And like it just keep giving them the opportunities to work through it, I think is really important.
Well, absolutely. And also just not allowing this, I'm not good at math type of thing, I think happened I mean, that's not happening as much anymore, is it? I mean, I've grown a lot.
Because I really try to frame it around it, like, this isn't math. And like, I tell students this all the time, like, when am I going to use this in real life? Like, and a lot of parents are like, I never use this in real life. And but like, kids ask me that all the time, and I always say, what did I tell you yesterday, or what did I tell you the day before? And I actually had a student who is in her 20s now. Her sister graduated last year, and I was talking with her at the graduation, and she said, there's one thing that you taught me that has always stuck with me. And she was like, you always say, like, whatever you learn in middle school, you never use in real life. Like, you will never use any of this. And that's true. Like, you don't really like need to know the Constitution unless you become a constitutional lawyer. Like, who cares, like, about who the main characters in To Kill a Mockingbird are? Like, that doesn't matter. School is about learning how to think. And so, like, all of this is like a head fake. How am I learning how to think? How am I learning how to process? Those are survival skills. So like in math, it's like, how do I get this, get the requirements, and work through something systematically and logically? That's what math really is. And so like, if you say you hate math, well, that means you like just hate like figuring things out in life. So like for me, I try to push the mindset that like, we're really here to like learn how to think and learn how to problem solve. And that is something that everybody needs to know how to do.
For sure. That's so, and just validating, I think it's validating to them to say, well, maybe you won't use this exact thing. Like, instead of arguing with them about it, like, well, you have to learn it.
Yeah.
That doesn't help their brain.
And
So
I say like, you won't use this.
You won't remember the slope and the the formula for those things. Sometimes you might, sometimes it comes in handy, but
trivia is a really good way to use this stuff, but
yeah,
that's not.
Oh, so any closing thoughts before your class comes rushing in the door, ready for class?
I mean, thank you for having me. I think like this discussion is really good to have. And just know that like, it's never too late for kids to start working through this stuff. I mean, they just need opportunities to do it. And like, and also changing a mindset it takes a long time. It doesn't happen overnight either, which is important to think. Like, I'm really lucky that I loop with my kids for 2 years. Like, I have them in 7th grade and in 8th grade. And like, they what I say to them is, it's okay if math is not your favorite class. I just don't want you to dread it coming and when you leave. And hopefully we get kids in a better position to be ready for high school.
But you're creating that environment, and you're creating that. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you, Ms. Key. Thanks for everything. And we really appreciate everything. Thank you so, so much.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Get the message out. Okay. See you soon. Okay.
Thanks,
bye-bye.
Lisa.
Bye-bye.